And if I can have you folks introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Cindy Watts.
Ron Watts.
Thank you. And I have authorized you to make a statement to the court as paternal grandparents of the children. And if you choose not to make a statement, but your designee, Ms. Powers, chooses to, she can do so as well. How would you like to proceed
Can
today?
I read that?
Yeah, do you want me to start?
I want you to start, but I would like to read
Who's
that.
going to be speaking today?
Your Honor, initially, they've asked me, and they're hoping that they have the strength to speak, but if they do not, they've written out their statements and asked me to finish for them. So
That would be fine. Who would like to go first?
if I could start, Your Honor. On behalf of the Watts, Your Honor, and to the community, we thank you for the opportunity and the recognition under the Victim Bill of Rights. We come today as the grandparents and the parent of the daughter and children whose life was taken in this case. We are not here to ask for leniency. We are not in any way condoning or tolerating the crime that has occurred and the pain that has been caused. We join in our daughter-in-law and grandchildren's family in saying this should never have happened. This is not condonable. This is something that we will never get over. We appreciate the consideration that everyone has paid, most especially the families that have lost everyone. We appreciate that they begged for Christopher's life. We agree and echo what they have said, that it is not his place to take anyone's life, nor would it be our place as a community to take his life. So we thank you for the opportunity and for every consideration and effort that's been put out. The prosecution in this case has in fact respected the Victim Bill of Rights. They took the time to explain that the information that my clients had at the time that they were interviewed was not correct. They were misinformed. They were searching for answers. They were not intending to cause any pain to anyone, and they appreciate that the prosecution answered their questions and gave them the time and the respect and the consideration so that they could tell this court and everyone in this community that the interview content was not their message, that they accept that their son has done this, that they accept that he chose to plead guilty, that he sought and requested their consent and agreement for a life sentence. They appreciate that he is given the opportunity to serve that life sentence. It is his responsibility, it is his sentence, and it is not enough to make up for what has done. We understand and we join the family in that we have questions. We don't know how such a thing could possibly happen, or that a man that was responsible for raising his children and protecting his wife would take the steps that he did, and that he would disregard their bodies and the love that he had for them and they had for him and everyone else, and take the gestures and put this community through the investigation and the discovery and the responsibility of bringing justice. We do not understand that. We do not think it was appropriate. We cannot begin to think that an explanation will ever justify it. My clients indicate that they understand that a full opportunity for a confession with all of the responsibility and accountability has not occurred. And they support the family and the request that that happen, if not today, at an appropriate time, in an appropriate manner, so that everyone can have peace, to understand to the best of their ability the details that they need and to have their questions answered. And by giving this opportunity of a life sentence, we hope that he embraces that moment. That had the death penalty been pursued, there would not have been an opportunity to be accountable and to give a full confession. And had the death penalty been sought, counsel would have fought for his life, the prosecutors would have been engaged in a multiple-year battle, the families would have been torn apart, this community would have had to subsidize it and endure it, and we have so much respect and gratefulness that that did not happen. we would strongly encourage Christopher Watts to give that full confession in the tone and in the timing that he thinks is appropriate with the guidance of his counsel. We feel that it would be appropriate and helpful to ease the pain and the suffering. But we also say we don't think that there's anything that he can say that will ever account for his behavior. There's nothing that can be done to cure the harm he has caused.
The courtroom was silent. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, but the kind that trembles, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. Cameras lined the walls, reporters filled the benches, and in the center of it all sat a man the world had come to hate, Chris Watts. Shackled, head bowed. His eyes flickered toward the doorway where his parents waited to speak. Across from them sat Shanann's family, the Rzuseks, their faces drained, their hearts shattered beyond repair. It was November 19th, 2018, the day of reckoning. As the judge entered, the murmur of whispers died instantly. Every breath in that courtroom carried a story of loss, guilt, and disbelief. For the Rzuseks, this was justice long overdue. For the Watts family, it was the day they faced the unbearable truth that their son, the boy they once cradled, had become a murderer. Cindy Watts sat frozen in her seat, clutching a tissue, her eyes glistening with a mix of confusion and motherly ache. Ronnie, her husband, barely blinked, staring into the distance as though hoping to wake from a nightmare that had no end. When the judge called their names, Cindy hesitated. For a moment, you could see it, that split second of hesitation between love and horror. She stood, legs trembling, walking toward the stand where the world would hear her voice for the first time since the murders. The air thickened, anticipation filling the room. Some expected anger, others redemption. But what came next would divide the nation. A mother's love colliding with a monster's crime. Before we continue, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share if you believe every story deserves to be heard, even the ones that haunt us the most. Cindy Watts stood at the podium, her hands trembling as she unfolded a small piece of paper, the one she had rewritten over and over the night before. Her voice cracked as she began, the courtroom holding its breath. "Chris is a good person," she said softly. "He's not the monster people think he is." A ripple moved through the room, quiet, tense, uncertain. Cameras focused on her tear-streaked face as she continued, recalling his childhood, his quiet nature, his smile that once lit up their home. She spoke of birthday parties, little league games, and Sunday dinners, memories that now felt like ghosts haunting her words. "I'll never understand why," she whispered, "but I will never stop loving my son." Across the room, Shanann's parents stared forward, their pain unspoken but deafening. Cindy turned to them and said, "I am so sorry for your loss." Her apology felt genuine, yet it hung in the air like smoke, fragile, fading, and uncertain whether it would ever reach their hearts. The prosecutor's face remained still, emotionless. The judge's eyes flickered toward Chris, who sat motionless, a man broken by the weight of his own choices. For a moment, it wasn't the face of a killer. It was the face of a son being mourned by the very people who gave him life. When Cindy's voice cracked again, she leaned forward and whispered through tears, "We forgive you, Christopher." That single line changed the air in the courtroom. Some gasped, others wept, and a few shook their heads in disbelief. As her words faded into silence, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you believe that even in the darkest stories, love and tragedy can exist side by side. Ronnie Watts rose slowly, his footsteps echoing against the marble floor as he made his way toward the podium. He looked older than his years, shoulders slumped, face pale, eyes glassy with exhaustion. When he spoke, his voice was calm but carried the ache of a man watching his entire world collapse. "Your Honor," he began softly, "this has been the hardest thing I've ever faced in my life." He paused, turning slightly toward his son. "Chris, we love you. We always will." The courtroom was still. No one moved. The only sound was the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the faint rustle of papers in the prosecutor's hand. Ronnie continued, speaking not to the world, but to his boy, the son he had coached in baseball, the one who used to help him change the oil in the truck, the one who now sat in shackles for murdering his own family. "I don't understand what happened," he said, voice shaking. "But I pray every night that God shows you mercy, that He helps you find forgiveness in your heart." He stopped again, glancing at Shanann's parents, eyes full of sorrow. "To the Rzusek family, I am so deeply sorry. I can't imagine your pain. You didn't deserve this. None of you did." The silence that followed was unbearable. Even the judge seemed to hesitate before speaking again. Ronnie wiped a tear, nodding toward his son one last time. "I'll never stop being your dad. And I'll never stop hoping that someday, you'll truly understand the pain you caused." As he stepped away, the courtroom felt heavier than before, filled with grief, love, and disbelief all at once. Take a moment to like and subscribe if stories like this remind you how thin the line can be between humanity and horror. The courtroom air grew thick with emotion as Ronnie returned to his seat beside Cindy. Their hands met, trembling, wordless, united in grief. Across the aisle, Shanann's parents sat in stunned silence. To them, every word spoken by Chris's parents was both unbearable and tragic. They could not comprehend how love could still survive after such unimaginable betrayal. The judge's face was stern, yet his eyes betrayed a quiet empathy. He had seen families destroyed before, but never two at once. The world watched as the camera panned across both rows. Two mothers, both broken. Two fathers, both grieving. One for the victims, one for the murderer. It was a scene that blurred the lines between right and wrong, between love and horror. Cindy's face was streaked with tears. She leaned toward Ronnie and whispered, "He's still my baby." That whisper wasn't meant for the microphones, but it carried through the courtroom, slicing through the silence like a blade. Shanann's mother, Frankie, closed her eyes. For her, that whisper wasn't love. It was a wound reopened. As Chris sat unmoving, his parents' words seemed to wash over him like rain on stone. No expression, no reaction. It was as though he had already left this world long before the sentencing began. The prosecutor folded his notes, prepared for the final moments. But in that pause, the reality sank in. This was not just the story of one killer. It was the story of how evil doesn't only destroy victims. It destroys the people who love the one who caused it. Before the judge's gavel fell, take a moment to like, comment, and share if you believe that even in the darkest tragedies, every heart in the room carries its own kind of pain. When the judge lifted his eyes from the bench, the room fell still. Everyone knew what was coming, but somehow, no one was ready to hear it. The sound of the gavel striking echoed like a thunderclap. "Christopher Watts, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole."
Has considered the arguments made by the attorneys. The court has considered the statements made by the victims in this case. The court's going to find that the plea agreement is fair and reasonable under the circumstances. I want to acknowledge the Rzusek family as well as the Watts family that showing mercy on Mr. Watts is understood, and I respect that decision to request that the district attorney not seek the death penalty in this case. And so the court is going to accept this plea bargain under the circumstances. Words that come to mind when I hear the evidence in this case are a senseless crime and the viciousness of the crime. And equally aggravating in this court's determination is the despicable act of disposing of the bodies in the manner in which they were done in this case. I've been a judicial officer now for starting my 17th year, and I could objectively say that this is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime that I have handled out of the thousands of cases that I have seen. And nothing less than a maximum sentence would be appropriate, and anything less than the maximum sentence would depreciate the seriousness of this offense. So the court is going to sentence Mr. Watts as follows. With regard to count number 1, murder in the first degree as it relates to Shanann Watts, the court is going to sentence you, sir, to a life sentence in the Colorado Department of Corrections, followed, with no possibility of parole. And that is going to run consecutively to all but counts 3 and 4. With regard to count 2, as it relates to murder in the first degree with Bella, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to count number 3, the court is going to sentence you as it relates to Celeste to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to counts 4 and 5 relating to Bella and Celeste as a different theory of first-degree murder, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and legally those sentences must run concurrently as a different theory of first-degree murder. Recognizing the unlawful termination of pregnancy for the unborn child that has been named Nico, the court absolutely believes that the maximum sentence of 48 years would be appropriate to run consecutive to the other charges, with an additional mandatory parole period of 3 years as set forth by statute. With regard to count number 7, as it relates to tampering with a deceased body, as well as counts 8 and 9, each a Class 3 felony, the court is going to impose a maximum sentence of 12 years each for those counts to run consecutively to the other counts. The court is going to order that the statutory fees be paid and court costs. The court's going to grant the prosecution 91 days to file a notice of restitution, and that will be the sentence of the court. We will shortly be in recess. I would respectfully ask the parties that you remain in your seat. There is a plan by the deputies on allowing people to exit the courtroom, so please remain seated until you are authorized to leave the courtroom based on the direction of the deputies. Deputies, I would respectfully ask that you take this defendant into custody and have him serve the rest of his life in the Department of Corrections. We are in recess.
Please rise.
Cindy gasped softly, her body shaking as the words sank in. Ronnie's hand reached for hers, but she was already staring straight ahead, frozen, blank, as if time itself had stopped. Across the aisle, the Razuseks held each other in tears. For them, it wasn't victory. It was finality, justice delivered, but at the cost of everything they loved. Chris didn't flinch. He didn't cry. His head remained bowed, eyes fixed on the floor. When the deputies took him by the arms, his mother's voice trembled through the silence. "We love you, son." The courtroom turned toward her, some in sympathy, others in disbelief. The same words that once comforted a child now hung in the air like a ghost, haunting everyone who heard them. As Chris was led away, the door closed behind him with a dull metallic click. The cameras panned one last time over the room. Two families, two worlds, forever shattered. There were no winners that day, only survivors of a story that would echo for generations. Outside, The world debated forgiveness and punishment, but inside that courtroom, one truth remained unspoken: that love, even when pure, can't save a soul consumed by darkness. If this story moved you, take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to Sinister Tales, where we uncover the stories that haunt the human heart. Because sometimes, the scariest truths aren't about monsters, but about the people who still love them.